welcome back to Digital Artcast. Your, I'm hoping, number one source for all things digital and art related. My name is Gordon Neal, and I'm here to talk to you today about art and all things awesome to do with art. And I have with me on the other side of the world an artist that we've tried to get on a few times, but just through scheduling conflicts and just general life, we've kind of been busy on both ends, and trying to get together has been a nightmare as always. But finally, he freed up some time, and he has came on today to talk about his career and all things art related also. For you guys checking in, we're still nearly towards 2,000 subs. If always you can share, like, and comment on this episode, or share it wherever you can to get some recognition for the podcast, that would be great, and I'd really appreciate it. And without further ado, we'll introduce today's guest, and that is Jarold Sng. What's happening,
man.
Jarold?
Yo.
Hey, yo. Thank you very much for coming on, giving up your time. I know it's greatly important because you're doing so many awesome things over there in Malaysia. But yeah, thanks for coming on and talking to us. Yeah,
thanks
no
so
worries.
much.
I've kind of came across your work a few times. I think actually I added you initially as a friend because some projects you were running at the time, and you were putting stuff through your Facebook or on ArtStation.
Right.
And I think the kind of interesting thing about you was when I initially noticed a lot of your work at the start, it was more the 2D side of it that I saw. A lot of the sketches you were putting up, more your kind of, mech designs, things like that. I think you were doing kind of the Metalheads sketches at the time, which were really, really cool, kind of Gundam-inspired knights with like medieval armor, which I thought was like a cool mix of two kind of old and new styles. And just other things I saw in your portfolio at the time. I think even at one point I saw your Bastion design, the kind of police siren one that you done.
Yeah, I love that guy, man. Overwatch makes such good characters.
Oh man, that was awesome. That was just, we were just talking about that when I was in LA in September. I managed to get a wee tour of the Blizzard campus and see where the team sat for Overwatch. And
wow, yeah.
Little did I know at the time they were just about to announce Overwatch 2, so that was a really interesting time to be running about the studio and seeing things. Of course, the unfortunate thing, because of just security leaks in general nowadays, when we were doing the tour, same with when we went to Riot, you could only go in certain areas because like the main area is basically where they were working on stuff, with computers. All that kind of stuff was off limits. It was mostly just like the cafeterias and the halls with some of the statues and stuff in it.
I was there at Riot Studios last couple of weeks back, I think, or maybe months. But yeah,
nice.
I got you. We couldn't go into the actual studio space and
see what they're actually working on.
Especially since they kind of have so many new IPs that they're popping out, so it makes sense.
Yeah, including stuff that's probably not announced or they're just experimenting with. But no, Overwatch is my jam, man. I love the fact, I think it's one of the few games I still have on my computer at the moment, because it's one of the things like Dota where you can go in and like play for 15 minutes and then just come back out, and you don't have to spend like hours and hours. Although I saw David Long was posting the other day about, or in fact yesterday, about Warcraft 3 Remastered just came out. So I'm like, something else I need to buy and play. And
Reforged just came out, huh?
Yeah, I think it's either today or tomorrow. I think it officially releases, but I think he was getting a kind of early access load before it actually launched. Yeah. But yeah, I've been keeping my eye on that as well for a while, because Warcraft 3, I think actually I wrote my own review of that game when I was like, I think 11 or 10 or something.
Nice.
Like I wrote an actual like Word document, like, this is why I love Warcraft 3. And then of course played it for years, and then it kind of died out. And then famously, somebody modded it and turned it into Dota, and then Valve took it all in-house.
Yep.
Dota 2 is now a thing. So so that's really interesting to see how that all kind of pans out, especially now the fact you play Dota and you're like, there's all these Blizzard characters that basically are now Valve's IP, which is crazy. So
well, funny overlap, because a big part of Warcraft 3 Reforged was done in Malaysia, actually.
Oh wow, really?
Nice. Yeah, it's by the X studio. I mean, the last studio I worked at, Lemon Sky. And I think early on they did kind of ask me whether I wanted to jump into art director, looked after the project for Warcraft Reforged.
Yeah, because you worked on StarCraft Remastered, right?
Yeah. So they are the ones that were Blizzard reached out to them to kind of basically look after their legacy as legacy games. I think is what they called them.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Legacy as in the OP or OG, the
Yeah, OG
original stuff.
games. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
So
it started with StarCraft, and that was nice.
yeah, no, there's that. Well, of course, there's such a huge following for all those games, and Warcraft, I think, initially was a bit of a weird one because people were like, "Do they really want to bring this back?" But then, obviously, everybody was like, "Yeah, we really do want to bring it back because it's such an amazing game." So,
Yeah.
yeah. But then you've worked on like a crazy amount of kind of weird and varied games, and
Yeah.
like everything from Sonic to like Gears and Dark Souls, StarCraft. Like you've just had this kind of list of projects that you've either art directed or concepted for. Um, but then now you're obviously doing stuff with your own studio, and you're doing more kind of collectible stuff and sculpts, and like you're just kind of, that's what I'm saying. When we kind of started the conversation, how I talked about like a lot of the stuff I saw initially from you was your more sketchy concept stuff, illustration, whatever you would call it. But then you've kind of like, I wouldn't want to call you a generalist because I don't know if that maybe makes it feel like you don't do everything well, or you do everything kind of well, but not one thing good specifically. But then you do have like the ability to turn your hand to like anything almost. Like you could do 3D or props or environments, but you can also do characters and sketching. And so how did that start with you? Like way back when you started your art career, did you train initially for 3D, or was your background more in 2D and drawing, or?
Yeah, I actually got a diploma in 3D animation. It's a pretty generic paper, but we were essentially trained to be 3D generalists almost for the animation industry here in Malaysia. And that was
Right.
kind of like the MO of all the schools at the time, especially the government as well. I think like everyone was trying to bank in on that whole craze with Pixar, DreamWorks, and all animated films. So it was
Yeah.
a big thing in Malaysia. So when I started working in the game industry, I was literally like just modeling super simple props and whatnot. But I think within the first month, probably because how slow and terrible I was, I think my boss pulled me in and asked me like, "Hey, do you like 3D more, or do you kind of like 2D?" And I think he kind of said, "I think I see more potential in 2D."
Okay.
Yeah, so I was just kind of like, yeah, as long as you're not firing me, I'm gonna do whatever. I didn't
Please let
say
me keep
that,
my job.
yeah,
Yeah.
but I was like, yeah, I can do 2D, and I had zero idea
Yeah.
to be honest. Literally, it was just doing stuff and seeing which thing worked, and if I got good replies from the client and my seniors and whatnot, then I was like, okay, this is good then. And if they said
Right.
that, then
Yeah.
I'll try to do
Well,
something else.
because we spoke about that before we kind of started recording, but I was talking about how one of my personal journeys and one of the things that I feel has not really held me back, but definitely has kept me from ascending quickly is the fact that I've kind of jumped back and forth between 2D and 3D a lot and been unable almost to decide what I want to focus on. But then you've had the opportunity probably to do multiple things because you've probably worked on just such different and varied projects. But have you got one skill set you think defines you? Do you feel like there is one like you stick more to than the other?
Oh yeah, I mean definitely it's concept art. I mean, like I said, even with the 3D things, I was officially trained to do 3D, but I think I don't have the patience or the skill set for it.
Mm,
Yeah, I think one thing I remember in school was just I was hyper passionate but hyper impatient as well. Like I couldn't stand looking at the same thing for more like than 10 hours, you know.
right. Yeah.
So then the idea of doing retopology and doing the UVs, and this was before ToppoGun or whatever smart systems that you had.
Right.
We
Yeah.
were still cutting and sewing UVs together.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah.
so I think I've always had a sketchbook in hand and just never really knew what was the right way to go forward. But I knew I'd like to create pictures.
Yeah, because that was interesting. You talked about how you feel you've not got any patience. Where I think with 2D, you need even more patience than 3D, because with 2D it takes probably longer to solidify those skills, as in, anatomy, figure proportion,
Mm.
perspective, color, light. Whereas I feel like with 3D, I can usually bash something together quite quickly and it looks reasonable, without spending like a ton of time. Whereas an image, I think there was one you done, the the White Queen and the Knights of the Round one. You know, to me, something like that would take a couple of days, maybe even a week or something, to try and get that finesse to the absolute nth degree. But yeah, in 3D, you can probably throw a lot of that stuff together quite quickly and overpaint. So, but then you're probably combining a lot of those skills because you have that 3D background. I take it, are you using a lot of 3D bases in your 2D paintings?
Yeah, I kind of take all of the bare necessities from each of them. I think you're right though, because 2D does actually is kind of like a long game in terms of building up that skill set.
Yeah,
I guess the good thing is like I have been sketching since I could remember.
right,
So in terms of drawing something out, it's hasn't been an issue.
right,
But painting and getting colors in, that was always kind of my weak point. So
right.
I think 3D helped me a lot on that. The more I picked up Keyshot, especially early on, just trying out the demo,
Yeah,
it did allow me to kind of quickly put lighting in. But
yeah.
speaking of which, I did do. I think there was a point I would give myself like a monthly challenge where I would give myself a painting that I couldn't cheat. Like I would have to just kind of paint every part,
Right,
and that kind of just helped me hunker down and kind of fill up any gaps that I didn't have,
right.
by
Yeah,
cheating this whole time.
yeah, because if you use the 3D route or using photobash, and then those can sometimes fill in those gaps where perspective could be off, or you're not quite sure of anatomy, so you'll use 3D to figure it out.
Yeah.
But then the more you do that, you try to eventually make it less and less, so you are just initially, or eventually, sorry, drawing the whole thing from scratch. You can kind of see, like, even in your earlier stuff, you can see the no gaps you had, but the things you maybe had a bit more discomfort drawing, or things you were not 100% sure with. But then you
Yeah.
look at, like, your statue concepts for like the Wolverine stuff, like that is like amazing, like, and that looks like 100% hand drawn and rendered, and
Oh,
your
thanks, man.
perspective is great, and colors, and your whole dynamic posing. So, like, yeah, like, it's those things just come with time. But I think that's where I was kind of no weirded out, but I felt weird how you said, like, oh, I don't feel like I have patience. But it feels like you've had patience your whole career building that one skill up over and over again.
Oh shit! Thank you.
No worries, man.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
No
Yeah.
idea what to say besides
No,
thanks. Yeah, that was very
I
nice.
do compliment my guests, so yeah, that's the reason you're on here. So, but
Gotcha.
then, of course, if you needed to go, because like you said, you're doing the whole statue thing now. Is a kind of side hustle? Is that the right word to use, or is it more like your main focus now? Or
So what happened? I mean, the thing is, like, statue design professionally, I think started for me about 3 years back, which was a very easy thing for me to kind of work in. I mean, I went from, I think, games for the most part of my years, but kind of landed into statue design. A friend of mine worked for a New York-based company called Project Triforce, and they were looking for an extra artist to onboard. And I was on my way leaving an art director position at this outsourcing place called Lemon Sky.
right,
And I figured, like, why not? Because I was looking at my room, and I've been buying toys since I had a paycheck. You know what I mean? Like, it's like
same,
a
yeah,
good, yeah, a good 60-70% of it unhealthily goes to toys.
hmm,
And I was like, why didn't I think of this earlier? In fact, I probably buy way more toys than I play games.
right,
So jumping into collectibles is actually pretty easy transition. I understood even the production aspects of it, the
right,
manufacturing aspects, and I do traditional sculpture as well, with clay and whatnot.
cool, cool,
So that kind of branched off of its own, and within a year, I was working with a Hong Kong-based company, and then we did a Thor statue, like all official stuff as well. A Thor statue, a Devilman
Hmm.
statue,
Cool.
um, Hunter x Hunter, and it
Oh,
kind of
nice.
yeah. I mean, I barely know old Japanese IPs, but
Oh man, there's so many good animes at the moment. There's
yeah,
like
I know.
there's just too many to like watch them all because there's like every season there's a new set of animes that come out in
And
Japan. And it's
it's
like,
fast, right? Like the amount
oh
of
yeah,
creativity that comes from them is, like the thing in Malaysia is like we're trying so hard to push our own IPs out,
hmm.
and it takes us like what 5 years, maybe if we're lucky.
Oh dude, the speed that the guys work at, which is criminal because I think we talked about this with Scott in the last podcast where like I found out a lot of those guys who work 7 to 8 hour weeks
Mm,
doing making these mangas and then of course making animes.
yeah,
They work so hard, but they get paid absolute pennies to work on these massive mangas and animes. They get like some of them get like an animator on like Naruto at one point was making like $1,000 a month for for 70, 80 hour weeks, and that is like criminal. Where
yeah,
you've got guys, in LA that have got some jobs that are paying them next to 15 grand a month. So I mean, it's like it's such a huge disparity between the two. Although it was funny though because we were watching. I'll need to send you the link, but there's an anime out just now, and it's all about concept art and about building worlds.
what really?
Yeah. There's a whole. It's like a set of school kids who want to design their own manga, I think, and then turn it into an anime. So it's all about like world building, like how they develop the characters and how they sketch out the backgrounds and everything. And then they have conversations about like modern day techniques that are mimicking. Like they have this whole conversation about, which is quite true, how a lot of modern animes now are using 3D
Yeah,
characters and backgrounds to make the transition of making episodes really quick. Which you can totally notice now a mile off. Like when I watch Demon Slayer now, like there's so much 3D in that compared to 2D drawing, and like they have these conversations and you're like, wow, man, like too real. Like these things are like so accurate. But yeah, there's a whole anime now about basically doing concept art, and yeah, like it's crazy the amount of work that goes into those things and the amount of work that people. There's like a really good day in the life series that I watched. There's a guy who does like different jobs in Japan, like he done a salaryman and a chef and everything in a ramen shop. And then he done one guy from Capcom who works as a programmer and showed like his kind of day in the life working at Capcom. And then the next one was like a guy who works on manga, and it was all about his day in the life of how he makes like his pages for his manga every week. And just such hard workers, man. It's ridiculous. So
yeah,
much work goes into that
yeah.
stuff.
They
So
were they were ethics kind of really should, and I think it's like across the country, right? So you have
yeah,
just this beast of a nation churning these things out.
yeah. Well, China's getting like that as well now. Like they're like I even when I was in LA, I was speaking to John Polidori, who was originally Blizzard and worked on Overwatch, but then moved to Riot Games. When I was speaking to him, he was like, "Oh, I'm just about to leave LA. I'm going to work in Seoul to be an art director for a studio over there." But like China and also South Korea now are like these huge, massive behemoths that put out these crazy CGs and films and animations that are just incredible. Especially the one I think we went to watch in the cinema last year about was it Abominable? It's about the kind of abominable snowman
Ah, right.
China thing. It was the that's based in China, but then it's like it comes to somebody's rooftop and they have to take it back to Mount Everest. But the whole animation was done in China. I think I'm not so sure it was in Beijing, but yeah. So there's a whole industry there now, and of course, when Warcraft the movie released across there, like it done better there than anywhere else on the planet because there was so much eyes on it at the time, and now it's like there's such a thirst for that stuff that they're making their own market. And of course now, recently, all the controversy with, of course, the gaming side of it, where there's now companies, a lot of American companies working with Chinese-based companies like Tencent and stuff that make all these. Like I think was it Tencent actually who made the Call of Duty mobile game. As far as I can remember, someone told me that. But yeah, so there's this whole slew of like creativity now that's like bursting out of Asia, that's like taking over the world. So
Word, yeah. And I think like yeah, speaking of Chinese, like I think anime 3D animation wise, I think they're heading into like a new renaissance, I guess.
yes,
In terms of games, I'm still not sure. But
mm,
I feel the same way almost almost everywhere. I think there's kind of like a Hollywood problem with games today. But indie games are great. I'm just referring to like the more expensive ones, I think.
The AAA stuff, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because then you've worked on your fair share of that as well, because you've done like everything from like, like Sonic All-Star Racing and, Splatterhouse and, they're going way back, and then Gears of War, there's no one, and your Dark Souls stuff. But is that stuff that's all just been through, because it's all been through Lemon Sky or other outsourcing studios, right?
Yeah, definitely. All of the bigger titles that you mentioned just now was through my outsourcing days. So I think just by being virtue of in that company, I was lucky to be associated with all those projects. When I was in the New York based company, just kind of being contracted here, I did work on the Gears 5 at the time.
Right.
But they're all really, quick touch based stuff. I wouldn't say I'm nowhere even close to someone who has like full AAA experience. I've just been lucky to bounce around a lot, I guess.
Yeah, but then of course you have your own story and also background and style that I think is very appealing. And I think sometimes it can be a little harder visibility wise when you're on that side of the world to try and attract the attention of some of the bigger studios in the West, because they typically look for people who are on their doorstep, or if they're going to bring someone across, it has to be someone who is like like a major player, someone who has like this massive following. Like Kim Jong-ji at the moment is getting like so much clout in all these different companies and so many projects, but it's because he's so incredible. He's like such a phenomenon in himself. Even do you know an artist called TB Choi by chance? Yeah, so Choi, like, she is, well, I mean, she's just incredible to start with, but then she's done so many projects now just on her own that she's attracting like so many studios because of just her whole persona and style is so incredible. Like, I bumped into her at LA as well at Lightbox, and her figure drawing stuff is ridiculous. I mean, no wonder she's a life drawn teacher back in South Korea, but like, her whole aesthetic and her style is just incredible. I think I actually got word of her work initially because she was done a lot of stuff for Ubisoft on Rainbow Six, and she done the Rainbow Six Siege comics. So yeah, just an incredible talent. Although again, still so young and still so kind of unknown. But like, people who are in the industry and really follow that kind of stuff know who she is. But yeah, like, unless you're like that caliber, almost like a lot of studios won't really look for you or won't really notice you as much. And like I said, especially across that side of the world, if you want to work for Blizzard and Riot and stuff like that, you really need to be making like a huge noise for people to really stand up and take notice of you. But then of course you're building, right? I mean, even the time you've been in the industry just now, people would say that's just like a start or a foothold in the industry, because it takes sometimes so long to break into different places and do different projects. Like, is this why you're doing kind of your own studio stuff now, or you're focusing on your own stuff because you want to have your own kind of part of the industry that you want to kind of have control over?
It was I think I wanted to do something in Malaysia for Malaysia as well, I mean, for my country. So I think definitely kind of going out to network. It's definitely one of my biggest weaknesses. I do like the privacy of my office, but that's all changing as I'm running a studio, and I think networking is it's so key to getting
Well,
the
they're
right gig.
running just to interrupt you, but they're running Trojan Horses Unicorn, the one that usually runs, and well, it's now in Malta and it was originally in Portugal and Lisbon, but there's now a THU and it's in Japan. I think it's
Oh,
Kaga
really?
or something. Yeah, they're running one in Japan
Oh, that's
this
close by.
year in September, I think it is. And I think is it Kaga? I think it's in. It's somewhere in kind of, it's like in the country, but outside of the city. It's in a kind of remote
Wait, so
area.
Kaga's the place?
I think it is. Yeah, hold on. I'll just try and look that up. THU Japan. It's been run and kind of organized. Andre has got his hand in it, but it's mostly been run by the guys who organize and run Polygon Pictures in Tokyo. They're
My
kind of
goodness, yeah.
organizing an event. Yeah,
Yeah,
Kaga, City of
yeah.
Kaga,
I see it.
and yeah. So that event's happening in May. Yeah, May this year. So that's what, a couple of months from now. But I think there's still tickets and stuff. But then that's more your side of the world, right? So that might be a bit easier for you to get to.
Yes.
Because I know it's not like a recruitment thing, so won't be people there looking to hire, but there will be a lot of industry people there, and it will be a good opportunity to mix and meet people. And because yeah, definitely, I think my superpower over the last couple of years has just been visibility and networking and getting to know people. My weakness has been the work side of it and producing a lot of stuff from my portfolio. So now I've kind of switched now, so I'm not doing anything this year, and I'm just focusing on my portfolio. But then, yeah, this would probably be a good event for yourself or anybody in Asia, really, because you know, Andre runs an amazing event, and
Mm-hmm,
now
mm-hmm.
that it's in Japan, it opens the door to like a whole slew of people that couldn't get over to Europe to experience it. Um, so yeah, that might be something for you to look into. And
Yeah,
yeah,
thank you. I mean, I definitely am actually. I'm looking at the site now. So
yeah, definitely. I think it's May time in Kaga, and yeah, it's supposed to be. I think they're kind of focusing on storytelling and finding out how to push the industry forward in that essence. So yeah, it could be a good opportunity to meet people, even just to bump into a couple of guys from Polygon Pictures, because I know
word,
like
yeah.
they're always looking for people for their projects. I mean, I know when I came back from THU last year, they had Shuvo or Shuzo. I can't remember if it's Shuzo or Shuvo, but he put out a kind of thing in his Facebook. He was like, "We have so much work because they're working on this stuff for Netflix. Like, we need a lot of people." So,
Mm.
but I think that's always the case because they're like access to get so much work all the time, and they've been going since like the 80s or something. So,
Yeah, they've been
yeah,
around, man.
a long time. Yeah, I actually
Yeah.
sat down with their CEO at THU, and we were kind of just eating something at one point
I
because we were just
I
on.
heard that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, oh yeah, like like blah blah blah, talking away and half an hour. Oh, what do you do? Are you an artist? He's like, oh yeah, I run Polygon Pictures. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. Okay, cool. Yeah, no worries.
Changes
But
the dynamic a little
yeah,
bit.
definitely. That's what I say is the great thing about this industry is the fact that you can talk to people at that level and
Word,
still
yeah.
they're just as human as the next. So, but yeah, man, check out the THU event in Japan. I think it would be a good opportunity for you to get across and showcase some of your work and rub
Word, yeah.
shoulders with a couple of people in the industry because there's always a lot of good people go to those things. I think actually a lot of people I knew who went to THU last year instead of going to the Malta one this year, they're kind of switching their funds and making sure they can go to the Japanese one instead because well obviously people want to go to Japan and check that out because of the Olympics and stuff, but also
Mm.
it's just a totally different setting. So um, yeah, definitely might be an opportunity for you to rub shoulders with a couple of different people and some
Yeah.
Polygon guys.
I
So
am
yeah.
making a trip to San Francisco this March for Games Connection America. So
Oh, cool, nice.
that's gonna
Yeah, I
be
know.
like
I think GDC's
it's
soon,
it's
right?
it overlaps actually. So GDC is kind of like the game developer thing, and
Universe
GCA
conference,
is
yeah.
is gonna be I think all business actually. So
Oh, right. Okay.
yeah,
Right. Yeah.
it's
Interesting.
gonna be like a speed dating thing where they're gonna check your yeah, yeah. I've been to business is weird, man. Like it has yes, it's a strange thing. Like especially the whole outsourcing world.
Yeah. There's definitely more I've seen because it used to be like even I had a worry when I was initially thinking about doing 3D where I thought that I would have to. I mean, eventually, I think if I want to work in AAA, I'm going to have to go and move to a studio somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that there's more like Airborne Studios and, like you said, Lemon. Like, there's a couple of people now who offer artists the opportunity to work on this 3D stuff, but again, remotely. So you don't have to be in the studio. Like, a lot of the Airborne guys can say, like, oh, I've worked on Overwatch, but you don't have to
Right.
go and work in the studio in California. Like, you can just work remotely from wherever you live. And also Decagon, like they've had a whole thing of like
Mm,
outsourcing as well. So yeah, there's a whole opportunity now, even in 3D. I even know some guys like way back in the day who were making like Dota skins, and making a fortune off that because if their skin gets paid, they get so much from Valve. But you can make a pretty decent living just doing that all the time. So yeah, you'll probably find with your model kind of business that you can turn that into like a semi outsourcing studio for different companies if you go there because you've already worked in those studios and you've got a feel for what it takes to fulfill those studios needs. So you
yeah.
probably could
Yeah.
start to air it towards and say, look, it's not just me, I can maybe get people involved and we can start pushing this to more like an outsourcing studio than just collectibles or just statues. yeah, there's a whole range of stuff you can do now. The internet is powerful, right? Like there's so much stuff you can do remotely now. So
Yeah, I have a friend who is doing the full nomadic lifestyle. Even in fact, I think he just got here with his wife and son to Malaysia. He's from Sweden.
oh wow, yeah.
Yeah,
Well, Malaysia's like, especially places like Bali and that. Like there's a whole kind of renaissance or a whole kind of revitalization of those places because they're really, really beautiful. You know, there's so much natural wonder,
yeah,
but then they're
yeah,
also very cheap to live in and don't cost a lot of money. You know, your wage you would get from an American studio will go like a lot further in a country where, you know, you can buy, you know, a 3-course meal for like less than £10 UK. I mean, so it just shows when people go travel there, like how affordable it is, and that's what makes it more interesting for people who want to go to live in those places. So, um, yeah,
yeah. I mean, it's strange that you kind of have to do that to get like a quality of life thing, but yeah, that's kind of like one of the reasons why everyone's doing the whole um, earn first world country and live
yeah.
third world country kind of a thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, like Malaysia, I wouldn't say. Even
Yeah,
now,
I
it's
think
not.
we're officially a developing country. Maybe I think
Yeah, I
the
was going
right
to say
word.
it's not quite what it used to be. Maybe even like 20, 30 years ago, when maybe you were younger, you know, and you lived there. But yeah, definitely. Like even people would say, I suppose, that about Scotland, that you know. But then, of course, because we're lumped in with the United Kingdom, that's always been quite a developed country and has always prospered in terms of technology and economy. Although Brexit, I feel like it's just going to
Oh man, yeah,
absolutely
you guys are.
destroy this place. Oh god, we're
This
so
is
fucked.
the was it the first? This is the first week official that Brexit's happened. Was it next week?
Yeah, no, they're just. I think even today, I think they're signing like the
Yeah,
whole official like leaving documents and what's
gotcha.
going to happen. It's just so. I mean, like it's every intellectual or business minded person I've spoke to has been like Brexit is going to be the worst thing that ever happens to the UK. But then this country is I don't want to say the UK is racist because there are good people here, but like there's so much hate to foreigners that really sucks and really drives people's opinions
Mm,
before they even think about how, you know, how much of a skill gap or how much of a deficit we're going to be in when we cut
yeah.
off our supply to European countries. Because the European Union has funded so much and
Mm-hmm,
so
mm-hmm.
many projects across here, like, you know, parks projects or charities or schools, loads of things like that. You know, there's a lot of places you can't walk about in Scotland and you see like a little plaque in your local park that says funded in, you know, in whole or in part by the European Union. So
Yeah,
a lot of good has come from us being part of that. But then, of course, people see the negative side of people who are foreigners coming to take jobs from people, but it's like they don't understand the dynamic. They don't understand what really is happening and what jobs they do take and don't take, and how, you know, what percentage of foreigners actually contribute towards and what don't. So because even when you look at like the social security system, a lot of people who are in benefits in this country, the highest population or the highest percentage of those people in benefits are actually white and British. So, you know, it's actually them that are sucking the economy dry, not people who come in from foreign countries. So yeah, a lot of people when they voted on Brexit, it was purely because they had a distaste for foreigners. As do a lot of countries, really. A lot of Europe's kind of like that in parts. You know, they don't like people from the outside. So, but then in Malaysia, is that kind of getting like that now because so many people are traveling there and trying to live, you know, for not a lot of money? Do you feel like it's maybe getting overrun now in parts because tourists or people try to live there?
I I wouldn't say that. I do think every country kind of has like an identity issue. It's
Yeah,
like where
yeah,
there's like I'm pretty agnostic about the way countries are. Like
yeah.
um,
No, I
yeah,
think it's just because eventually I think what's going to happen is it won't be like, you know, people will be from one city or one state or one country. Like the
exactly.
planet will just be
Yeah,
it'll just be the planet. People will just move freely between all countries. Because then even you know, people were starting to get surprised about how many cases of this virus were going about from Chinese citizens from Wuhan. But then I think for that city's population, something like 11 million people, like it's more than double the amount of people that live in Scotland. So yeah, there's obviously going to be people going back and forward for the Chinese New Year, you know, the lunar celebrations. So, of course, there was going to be people in all parts of the world that were traveling to Canada and America and Japan and Malaysia and
Yeah,
Australia.
yeah. And like
So
if you're not thinking that we're a global, I think it's a global entity now, like it's, yeah, you'd be surprised. You're gonna be pretty surprised.
oh
It's
yeah,
all
definitely.
connected at the moment. So like the idea that I think UK wants to separate themselves, it's a
Yeah,
little too late. It's-
I know, which is interesting as well because we had this whole conversation about like that's something that we were like, oh no, we don't want to separate from the EU. But then, of course, in Scotland, we've been really desperate the last couple of years to separate from London and
yep,
become
yep.
independent. Also, same with Catalan in Spain when they tried to separate from Madrid, and then of course that ended a horrible way. But yeah, like it's this whole thing of like trying to go back to people having borders and walls and things put up so that people can't get in and out, and it's just, I mean, like I think the London thing was more justified for us being independent because we are like a small nation upon ourselves, and
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
when you look at the two biggest cash generators in the UK, it mostly is just the whole of Scotland and London that are the two biggest incomes. So that's the thing I think we want to really take our kind of future and our country and our control in our hands. But then, yeah, it's hard to then argue because people are like, oh no, but you want to be, separate, but you want to also be part of Europe. It's like,
Yeah,
it's difficult.
makes
It's
sense.
difficult.
Yeah, that makes
Yeah.
sense. I mean,
But,
side note, I was in Edinburgh, very nice place. I mean, I had a
oh
great
yeah,
time there. Yeah.
yeah. There was I remember I was having a conversation with someone the other day, and they were like, oh yeah, Edinburgh, is there much game development there? And I was like, yeah, there's Rockstar North. They make Grand Theft Auto.
That's true.
Like the biggest game franchise on the planet next to like Call of Duty. Yeah, it's made here in Edinburgh. And they were like, oh shit, I never
My
realized. And
goodness,
then,
that makes sense.
yeah,
Yeah, that's.
yeah.
I
Well,
always
they used
assumed that they were in LA because of the way that, yeah, because of
Yeah,
GTA.
there's there used to be DMA Designs in Dundee, and then they moved into Edinburgh offices, and then Take Two Interactive bought them, and
Mhm.
Take Two at the time had a lot of Rockstar studios,
Ah,
and then they had like different names for them. So there was Rockstar London, Leeds, New York, LA, and then in Scotland they became Rockstar North, and they basically bought the rights to Grand Theft Auto, and then they made 3, 4, and 5 out of the studio in Edinburgh. So
gotcha.
yeah, although it was mostly just like not Rockstar North by themselves would make that whole franchise, but now with Red Dead and now I'm assuming with the new GTA, it's becoming more a collaborative effort. So all the studios around the whole planet
Mm,
contribute in small parts to like with Red Dead, like Rockstar North worked in it, but they worked in certain parts of it, and then New York had some, and then San Diego had parts as well. But then again, when it comes to Grand Theft Auto, they'll probably do the same. They'll start outsourcing different parts of different studios as well because it'll be such a. I think because the games are so large now, you can't really just have one team working on it. You really need multiple entities contributing in different parts. So. But yeah, there's Rockstar North. They've been here forever. Blazing Griffin, Outplay. There's a new company just actually opened up in Edinburgh called Build a Rocket Boy. But apparently it's ex Rockstar guys and Crytek people as well. I think they're working on a AAA developed game, although they've not announced anything yet. But they have been hiring recently. So yeah, there's a lot. There is a lot here, and there's Axis, of course, in Glasgow who do CG cinematics for Blizzard and Magic the Gathering and Gears of War and all that kind of stuff. So
right. Yeah.
yeah, there's a healthy kind of tech industry here. And my partner, she works in programming. She's a software developer and she does different things around the country as well. So
Oh, that's a
yeah,
great career, man. I have to
yeah,
say.
yeah.
Oh my
She will,
goodness.
she'll be doing quite well compared to me when in the next couple of years. So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, she'll be doing very well. So yeah, it's an interesting time to be involved in the country, and yeah, it's a good opportunity. Also, like you said, we talked about this originally about being a nomad and traveling and seeing different parts of the world. And then of course Malaysia is now like a destination for people who want to live that nomadic lifestyle but don't want to have a desk or an office. They can just get up in the morning and sip their coffee in front of like an ocean wave or a bar on the beach. You've not got to be stuck in an office or doing whatever. Basically, you can just make your own time and rules. So yeah, it's a good time to be alive. So you're doing the whole collectible thing. What else is on the cards for you? What else are you is there anything you can talk about that you're working on just now that isn't like kind of covered in NDA or something that you're working on that isn't stuff you can't announce or?
Yeah, that's a good question.
What can you talk about?
Yeah.
Well, you're doing the whole collectible thing. Is there something that you're specifically working on just now with that? Is there like one particular model that you're building towards at the moment, or?
You mean what statues have I worked on or am I working on right now?
Well, yeah, because I don't know much about the company because we've talked briefly about you have the company set up and you want to do collectibles, but as what have you produced since you've kind of set up? Is there ones that have already come out or are coming out, or?
Yeah, I guess I should clarify. I mean, so my studio is called 1010 or like 1010 Studio. And we're kind of like, we actually focus on pure 2D concept art outsourcing. So we do illustrations, we do designs, and we've worked on games, animation, and sometimes even statues, I guess, because of my background.
All right.
So it's kind of like a mixed bag. So I guess I just took everything that I could do and personified it into a studio with my team.
Right.
Um,
Right. Okay.
so that's why it's a little bit kind of broad, our service route.
Yeah, there's a lot of different things that you do kind of really well or outsourced. So you've got your concept side of it, and you can do some 3D or some. So are you using the studio to concept for models as opposed to building them in 3D yourself?
Yeah, definitely. We're kind of like more in the business model to Six Mod Vodka or Opus
Right.
Arts. Yeah,
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I'm with you now. Right. Okay. So it's more the concept inside of it as opposed to the 3D stuff. But then the 3D is like the end result, but then you're more at the pre-production phase. You're there concepting the initial designs and sizes. And but then of course you also have experience in 3D and like you said, you
yeah,
traditionally sculpt as well. So when you draw that stuff out, you can understand more how that's put together than anybody else.
yeah. And what we actually offer in kind of like all of our dealings is that we can even do the 3D block out for you because we use it for ourselves as well.
Right.
And that helps a lot in the production. So if it's a statue, it will lock down basically the momentum, the
Mm,
energy of the piece. If it's
mm,
a mechanical design, it will just give us all the volume key points that we need for the design.
right.
So I do think like that's the way the entire industry is shifting anyway, is either going to be a VR sculpt or a 3D blockout or some
Yeah.
form of additional media to support your design. And so we're
Well,
just kind of working with that.
yeah, of course. Now I was going to say with 3D printing because one of
Yeah.
the greatest thing now is that like when I was at LA, Raph had his table and he was selling his Yoshimitsu sculpt, um,
Oh,
but also
right.
but also his Nova sculpt, and I got one of his Novas and brought it back signed. So I have like one of like maybe 20 Nova busts that Raph sculpted sitting on
Nice.
my office table. But like the ability now to produce that stuff at like a cost effective measure, he at the time kind of went through a third party who molded them for him, but then the end production prints were like so detailed, like the little parts of his armor that were kind of studied and stuff that like for such a not a generic mold, but a mold that was like kind of set that wasn't like super in depth. There was so much detail in the model. There was so many tiny just bumps and scratches and chips of his armor you could see that came out really really well. And it all kind of got put together with magnets, so you can actually take them apart and then put them back together. It all sticks together. But
That's
the
a good
ability,
one. I mean, they're not all like that, though. I have to say. I mean, I've worked with factories that don't give you the full Monty.
okay,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah, no,
I did
yeah,
release a statue on my own, and I think we tried our best with the budget that we had. It's the
yeah,
nicest way I could say it.
yeah.
So there was like some things that I wish could have been done better.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's just in general, you've got to think about cost effectiveness. And I mean, when Raf was selling his stuff at LA, he definitely wasn't selling it to make a profit. Like, I
Oh,
think the
yeah,
money, the
makes
money he
sense.
made was like just covering his costs and no
Hmm.
more. In fact, he probably ended up paying a bit of money for it. But the idea wasn't for him to build a business to sell models. It was just to get people to see and hold his stuff that he created, and have a kind of like a keepsake and a memoir. But
Yeah.
then he was saying like if you want to actually make money, you have to sell like Sideshow. They sell a model for $700-800. I mean, and they've got to because there's so much work goes into them because they're also hand painted. So his stuff wasn't even painted. It was just the grey
Right.
sculpt render.
Right.
So, but then to take, like the Yoshimitsu, he brought the kind of full size one that he ended up airbrushing and painting himself. But then he was saying if you had to sell that to make a profit, I mean, you're talking like people couldn't have offered him enough money to buy that. Like it was so
One-offs,
yeah.
right? Yeah, it doesn't
I
make
mean, like
sense.
if somebody was about to walk in with maybe $5,000 or $6,000, then like maybe, but like that unless you're willing to pay that kind of money, then you're never going to get quality stuff. And I think that's where it's been good. Where I'm trying to mind the First For You figures or something like that, but they do a
Yeah,
lot of licensed stuff.
First For Figures, yeah.
Yeah, they've been kind of good in the way that they've kind of built the business model, that they've went to the companies and got the licenses and built merchandise based off that IP, and that's where a lot of the businesses came from. They'll be able to get orders and keep business going because they're using those IPs. Like I think a couple of months ago they done the Spyro remastered statue, Crash Bandicoot stuff. Okami I think is one of the latest they've just announced.
Yep.
So yeah, like bursting on those IPs is like the best way to get people to pre-order that stuff, because unless you get that kind of clarity or that kind of big name behind your stuff, then you're really going to struggle to shift statues in general. So but then is that something you would want to do eventually, is go straight from concept and actually build something yourself and produce stuff for the studio, like as part of like start selling stuff online? Or
I want it for my own IPs. I mean, the whole Metalhead thing was like a little dip into creating my own products.
Yeah, because they're freaking awesome, man. They're like they could come as almost like Gundam kits, because like they just seem like that kind of pre-built mecha kind of style. But yeah, like those things would be great. Actually, they would look really good on everybody's desk. But yeah, stuff like that would be awesome to print and send off. Even just maybe even I know Weta done it way back last year, where they made a whole board game and they shrunk a lot of their things down to miniature size, so they had like the like the minifigs.
Nice.
Yeah, they would be really cool to make even like a board game out of metalheads, or make them in like small collectibles, like armies and stuff like that. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I know. I would love that. So I think at the moment I'm just kind of gradually building out concepts for them and doing little write-ups.
Yeah, and then eventually try and get them kind of out into people's hands, or get them out into people, or like maybe run like a kind of Kickstarter and back it and try and get it any like an actual full board game or a miniatures game.
The first product was actually through Kickstarter. Yeah, it kind of helped us at least kick it off the ground.
Yeah, because then you're kind of entering like Warhammer territory, right? Like you're starting to use the minifig kind of way, like the way the Warhammer guys have the figures for the collectibles.
Yes. Games Workshop, yeah.
Who are of course legends, and yeah, and I mean that's what I was going to say. When you talk about the Warhammer stuff, you think about the money they guys have made over the last however many years doing Warhammer stuff, and I think they've got license to print money at this point, because a lot of their stuff is really great, but then I think the reason I always shied away from it is because it can start to cost like so much money to get involved in buying all those figures, and especially like the larger units that are like the huge tanks and stuff. They cost sometimes like £90 over here, nearly £100, and which is like so much money for like one tiny little figure. But
it's funny because like my girlfriend actually works for a Games Workshop at the moment. So
oh wow, interesting. Is she doing 3D stuff as well, or
no, she's part of like their business and operations side.
Oh cool, right? Okay, yeah.
So I get to use her staff discount, which is the best thing ever. Like, we were buying so much stuff and just kind of not building and painting them. They're just kind of sitting at my
the desk
storeroom.
Yeah. No, I've had a couple of them just sitting on my desk at one point because they're just so cool to look at. Like
I
it's
know,
just awesome.
I know.
Yeah, at your desk. So,
but dude, I would kill for like a large scale posable version.
Oh yeah, I think that'll probably come at one point once, especially once 3D printing gets more. Because I know people are starting to 3D print them
exactly
just to have the armies, but then you can't use those in games because they have a whole rule like it has to be the official ones and it has to come from their kits. But then it's like there's so many people who would love to probably get the knowledge to how to build their own and build their own variants of those things. So, but then of course, like just to have it in your desk. I think the only thing that's been the best addition to my desk in the last like 6 months is that Sphero, the company from America, they had the little ball that like rolls around your floor.
Yeah,
They
they
made
did the BB-8 as well, right?
well, yeah. So I was going to get that, then I found out they made an R2 unit. So I've got now
Oh, nice. Good
an
call.
R2D2 that like rolls around my carpet at night and like beeps and stuff. So, but yeah, like the toys, man, and I think that's a great testament to just the industry is that most people will work in this industry because we're fans, right? Because we love games or toys or whatever, or movies. People getting in the movie industry. You listen to so many people who worked on all the latest Star Wars were like, yeah, like I watched Star Wars as a kid and I was a huge fan of it. And like I wanted to work on this because specifically I was a Star Wars fan. So yeah, it's like it's a great instance when you get to translate those skills into something that you're super passionate about. Like you said, working on the Games Workshop stuff if you ever got the chance, or working on like a Marvel superheroes statue because you're getting to be part of that world for a second. So yeah, like it's amazing that the opportunities and like you said, with you working in Malaysia, you can work with all these major companies around the world because you now can have an online presence, right? You can now have an online presence to talk to people in New York or California or Japan or whatever, really, because um, there's no barrier, there's no border really that stops you working in different places. So
Yeah, and
yeah,
I do think there's like a nice added sensibility as well. I think a lot of times when the clients do reach out to my studios because they're looking for just a different format of input creative wise.
yeah,
So it kind of works its way out being far out here, and I think Malaysia is unique in that sense because we're quite English educated, right? We did have a British presence in our history,
okay,
but we still kept a lot of our migrant roots and migrant heritages. So
yes,
we're always on the outside looking in. I mean, I grew up
yeah,
with American shows, I grew up with
hmm
Western games, but
hmm
then anime came in and most of us grew up with that as well. So a
yeah,
lot of our input is like a heavy influence of basically everyone's media.
yeah.
So we're
I think
super flexible in that sense.
Western media has influenced so much in just the general culture in the East. And you look back to how manga was originally conceived. It was when, after the Second World War, a lot of the American troops gave the kids American comics at the time, like Captain
Right.
America stuff. And then those illustrations were then interpreted with their own style, which was mixed with their calligraphy. And then that became the original manga. And then, of course, eventually anime. So, yeah, there's a whole Western influence, but now I think a lot of the Eastern styles have been developed to a point now, like they have their own, anime and manga in Japan, especially, or just in general in Asia. It has its own identity because of the years of refining it and making it its own thing. And now a lot of Western companies are now trying to emulate their style because
Hmm.
you look at,
Yeah,
especially like Riot
exactly.
Games, Blizzard,
Yeah.
like a lot of their stuff is very heavily anime influenced. So yeah, it makes total sense that it's kind of went full circle. And now Malaysia, of course, and China are all picking up on the mobile gaming and the cinematic stuff. So, um, yeah, man, I give it 5 more years, and you're probably going to see like some major stuff coming out of Asia. Because, like I said, I'm pretty sure Tencent are based in China, and I'm sure they did work on the Call of Duty mobile game, which was like the biggest selling mobile game ever. So, yeah, like that kind of stuff is just going to keep coming out. And then I think obviously PUBG also has a lot of Korean roots as well, and
Oh yeah, because Blue Hole is basically Korean.
yeah, they're also there. And then, like I said, Blizzard has ties with a lot of Chinese companies, and I know Riot Games definitely has as well. So, in fact, I'm pretty sure that Riot's one of their biggest investors is Chinese backers as well. So,
Yes.
yeah, there's a lot. Yeah, there's a lot of people who have now mixed across to those countries, and it's probably going to be you're probably on the right side of the world to be starting your company because there's going to be more and more outsourcing studios. And there was a whole thing, an article I read actually, where people were talking about AAA game development and how they were wondering if it was still a viable thing in this time and age because they felt that games were almost coming to a point like movies years and years ago where there was a kind of huge collapse. I doubt it would get to that point because there's still so much money in games, but they were more saying like AAA studios would start breaking off and you would see more outsourcing studios around the world like you are kind of building. Do you feel that's accurate? Do you feel like that's something that will be happening eventually?
I do think there's going to be a split where
Right.
you're not going to get one monster of a machine anymore. I don't think so.
Right.
It's the same with the way the economy is going as well. That you have like, well, I shouldn't say that, right?
Yeah.
I do think there's just opportunities for everyone.
Yeah, of course.
But we are growing at a pace that is, I don't think we even understand like
Right.
the what you can create as an individual, and this is 5 people now, like a
Yeah.
small team, and then how you can sell it is totally different.
Yeah.
The whole open market thing as well, that's the big kicker. You don't need like a giant service center anymore.
Yeah. You can just do it from smaller, kind of more core defined places that are
Mm-hmm.
dotted throughout the world. You know, I was even watching a documentary recently on Supergiant Games, the guys who made Bastion and
Mm.
Transistor and now Hades, and they're only a team. Well, now they're like a team of maybe 20 people, if even that.
Was that
But they started,
the no clip one?
yeah,
Yeah,
but then they started with like 5 people in somebody's bedroom. So I mean, like the way that they've kind of built as a company, they were very small, very core. Only I think they're looking at about like 2 or 3 artists that work for them. But think of how much success those games have had over the last 10 years.
yeah.
So yeah, it's
Well, even
very, very.
Minecraft, right? I mean, that's like the definition of a success story for games.
Oh yeah, like when he sold that to Microsoft for,
Mm-hmm.
I think it was billions of
Yes.
dollars.
Yeah.
So you know, like yeah, his life goal has definitely succeeded. But yeah, it was even Notch was saying, you know, he was just doing it as a fan project, and then it just absolutely blew up into this thing. PUBG's the same, right? I mean, it was
Yep.
like a mod of Arma 3, and now like it's its own thing. It has its own tournaments, its own international ties, its own you know tournaments and all that kind of stuff. So like yeah, the sky is the limit for people who want it. And like we were talking about very early on about Warcraft 3 coming back, but then of course that had a whole legacy over the last 10 years where that was modded and made it into a completely different game. And now Dota, you know, their international tournaments run prize pools of up to $30 million, which is crazy. So
Oh yeah.
like yeah, it's like
Nothing beats League in that aspect though, because I think community
yeah,
wise, man, they did so many things right, and they were
yeah,
so clear with what they wanted to do.
they were when I was getting the tour from my pal Lydia who works there.
Mm-hmm.
She's actually working on the FPS they just announced. So that was her what she was working on.
Oh, nice.
Um, but then she took me into the kind of little the octagon thing that they
Oh
do
yeah,
the
I was there.
live
Yeah,
streams from.
it's
Yeah.
crazy.
And then I was watching some of the live streams and I was like, oh shit, I've been there. I've stood like on that stage. I know exactly where they are. So yeah, it's interesting to see like all these little kind of nooks and crannies and the parts of the studio, and then you're like walking about it. You're like, oh wow, I've been there and I've seen that. And but yeah, League is I think a lot of their attendance is like it's rivaling some NFL games now. So
Yeah, yeah.
you're definitely going to find in the next 5 to 10 years, esports is definitely going to be like something that's going to be mainstream and like streaming on TV, and will replace stuff like soccer eventually, and football and rugby and tennis and all that kind of stuff. Like there'll start to be more of those tournaments just broadcast everywhere. Like even Evo now, like the fighting game tournaments, like those run like in the hundreds of thousands of people. So which are crazy people that you know play these games, you know, constantly, and then come to these tournaments and all over the world and take home millions for just being able to play stuff like Tekken or Street Fighter or King of the Fighters. Yeah, it's just a great time, I think, technology wise, to be alive and be a geek also in this culture, because there's so much opportunity for you to work in games or work in statues or work as an esports athlete. So sky's the limit, really.
Yeah, even with cloud gaming, right? I mean, we haven't really gone into that yet.
Oh yeah, God! I actually just I'm part of the Stadia founders group, so I'm using
Oh,
Google Stadia stuff, which has been great. Like I've really enjoyed it, but at the same time, it's lacking a lot of really good features that I feel xCloud is kind of trumping them with. The fact
yeah,
that
yeah. I've been following the
yeah,
news. Yeah, Stadia isn't doing too well.
I mean, it's okay, but like, I love the fact that I can open like a tab in my browser and jump into a game of
Mm-hmm.
Red Dead or something like that. But at the
Mm-hmm.
same time, there's only maybe 20 games in the whole service, where I think xCloud is up to nearly 100 now, and it's getting to the point they're going to announce like a Game Pass for that as well. So you pay like
Yeah.
an extra £5 a month or something on top of your Game Pass, and you get access to all the xCloud games, which is just going to absolutely destroy Stadia because they just don't have enough games, and they also you have to buy the games individually at full price sometimes. So
Yes, counter to what they were trying to sell initially. It's
pretty much,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, like I don't really regret buying it, but at the same time, I feel like it just hasn't hit as hard as I thought it was gonna. When I initially looked at the whole package, I thought, like, definitely, I would say the one thing that Stadia has going for it is that on the technology side of it, no one is kind of coming close to what they're doing at the moment, because
Right.
they have the highest fidelity graphics
Mm-hmm.
running 60 FPS 4K and also streaming, and they also have like a super low latency lag. But I think the thing that they're losing out to in Xbox terms is they just don't have enough content. If they had like 100 games and they had something where you paid so much money per month to get like 30, 40 games, included, that would be definitely something that would be able to rival Xbox with. But at the moment, with their lack of games and the fact you have to pay full price for them, it definitely takes away from the experience. And yeah, also their fidelity of graphics and stuff is really dependent on a really good connection, and it can sometimes be spotty over here. So definitely, if you haven't got a great connection in your country, then you're going to struggle. So, which is the same from all cloud gaming. Like all cloud gaming relies on the internet, but yeah, Stadia sometimes can be quite picky about how it wants to run. But then, of course, it's the very start. I think when the free version of it launches this year, where people will basically be able to play those games for free on their web browser without having to
Yep.
pay anything,
Yep.
that's when it'll take off. But then at the moment, because it's behind a paywall, that's what makes it really hard to get behind.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
yeah. Yeah, definitely like a time to be a geek is like, there's so much stuff going on just now. There's almost too much. That's the problem, I think, even with trying to settle down and do some work on your computer. Is like you've always got the temptation to be able to just jump on and play a game or watch something on Netflix or,
Oh my goodness. Yeah, actually, you're right. I mean, because I teach students, so I think, man, just the amount of distractions of being an art student today is going to be intense.
all ridiculous. Not to mention that Studio Ghibli just signed a deal with Netflix, so I think as of Saturday, like all the Ghibli films are going to be on Netflix.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
yeah. So I was like, whoa, that's
I
going to be
didn't know.
intense.
Dude, time to binge, man. Like,
Oh yeah, definitely, man. There's a lot of Ghiblis that I haven't actually watched. Yeah, I've watched like the core ones like Mononoke and
yeah, yeah,
Spirited
yeah,
Away,
yeah. Same.
Howl's Moving Castle, but then I've not seen some of the stuff like Kiki's Delivery Service or Totoro. So
Yeah. Hold on. So are they going to do like 60 FPS, 4K for all of them, or?
I don't know what the plan is, like fidelity wise, like vision for the whole, like if it's going to run in 1080 or whatever. But
Mm-hmm.
definitely, they're getting the full library of Ghibli films on Netflix. So because I think they lost the Disney stuff because Disney went to the Disney Plus side. I think in the UK, Sky TV are going to barter a deal with Disney as well, so they can run the Disney Plus stuff on them. So I'll eventually get to see Mandalorian. But yeah, Netflix, I think, are trying to get more of the Ghibli stuff for a long time, and then it kind of fell through, and then didn't, and then fell through, and didn't, and then just I think it was last week they announced that it's all coming, like as of Saturday they're going to be all on Netflix. So I was like, oh shit. So
Yeah, I'm actually surprised. Yeah, because I think all of the distribution, like the physical distribution in the States, was by Disney, right?
yeah, I think they had a deal for so long, probably actually till 2020, and I think when it came to renegotiate it, I think they've probably decided to go elsewhere or decided maybe Netflix has gave them more money. I don't know what the case is, but yeah, that'll be really interesting because having those available will be quite handy because they're always good to watch and binge. I'm actually going with my partner on Friday to watch Spirited Away on like a cinema screen. Like there's some cinemas in Glasgow are re-showing the films like on the big screen. So
Nice.
I'm going to see Spirited Away on Friday, and at the end of February they're doing Mononoke. So
Wow.
going to watch that. So
Yeah, Spirit Away is my favorite.
it was the first one I watched years and years and years and years ago.
Mm.
And then I think the second was Hell's Moving Castle. And then I watched a couple of other ones on and off. And then I think it took me up until last year or the year before to watch Mononoke for the first time. And then I was like, why was I not watching this like years ago? It's such a
Yeah,
good film.
yeah.
So yeah, so it's definitely been a slog of getting all those films watched. But yeah, there's so many though, and then obviously he's starting to make new ones. And then there was one recently that came out. It was all like a kind of watercolor painting that moved and everything. And yeah, there's so many of them. And then of course I've been trying to get into some of the more bigger anime films that came out. Like is it Your Name was one of them that came out recently.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, love that as well. And then there's a recent one that just came out called, is it 3 centimeters a second or 5 centimeters per second or something like that. It's all about like a rocket launch in Japan. But again, there's so much to consume. Like it's almost impossible. I mean, I've got a Crunchyroll membership at the moment for my anime
Oh
stuff, so
wow, gotcha.
I get that straight from Tokyo. But like I'm deep into My Hero Academia just now because
Nice.
I love that. It's just such a good anime. And then I've started watching Demon Slayer, but there's just so much. Like it's hard. I think I was watching Black Clover as well at one point, which is really, really good. But again, I fell behind that because I'm just doing so much work and then trying to like catch up on them and watch the episodes. I'm getting to a point now. I really need to stop actually when I'm just trying to watch the episode and skip through it and just like catch all the highlights rather than actually watch the whole 20 minutes.
Oh, you know what? Like that's actually what I do. I just kind of look for YouTube compilations for all these things.
Yeah, I'm the same even with games now. Like if I can't be bothered sitting to, play a game, like I'll just fire it on, a screen next to me so I can just catch the gist of what it is. The only game I've recently invested in, I think, in the last, for a long, long time, was the new Walking Dead VR game came out recently for Vive and Oculus.
See.
Skydance made it, the guys who basically worked with Telltale. So it's like a Telltale Walking Dead game but in VR, and I've been playing it with my Vive headset, and it's incredible. It's one of the best, like, because most VR games are like 2 or 3 gigabytes, but this one was 35.
Ooh.
And I was like, whoa! But then
so
when you walk about,
has content.
Oh yeah, like a ton. When you walk about the cities, there you can walk in and out most houses and raid all the drawers. And there's zombies around every corner, and you've got to like dig your knife into their skull to kill them and everything. And yeah, it's really, really interesting. You have to craft and build guns yourself and wander and not get killed and fight between factions. And it's like a full almost AAA game experience. It's the best thing I've played in VR since I think the Vader Immortal series, which was the Star Wars VR thing that ILM made, which is just incredible. It's like the closest thing to being a real life Jedi. It's so good.
Gotcha.
Especially with the Oculus Quest now, because the Quest allows you to play VR with no wires and no computer. Like it all just runs out the headset, which is incredible. Like that's almost like making VR accessible to everybody, because if you don't have to plug in a computer and you don't need any kind of cameras or anything. Have you heard of the Oculus Quest?
I have the PS4 thing, the VR.
Right.
Yeah, not the Oculus one.
So the Oculus Quest is a VR headset with controllers, but everything runs out of the headset, so you don't need any computer or any console.
Oh, shit.
It's all in the headset.
Nice.
And there's no wires, there's no cameras, nothing. You could literally just be in the middle of a street somewhere and put the Quest on your head and play a game. Which is just incredible. Like
Crazy.
It makes it so accessible to people. Like I've seen Yama Yuriev, he was actually going to events last year, and he was taking the Quest with him in his little mobile carry case, and then he was just giving it to people in the middle of like rooms, and then they were using the sketching tool Quill just to build stuff, or Medium to like make stuff and sculpt stuff just wherever they were. The computer, they didn't need to plug anything in. They just literally put the headset on their head, and then they were just sculpted and drawn within 5 minutes. So
oh my god, dude, I've attended his workshops before. I've been calling him Jama this whole time. Like
I think Jama or Yama, people kind of get mixed, but I think Yama is the official, like his actual name. No, it's cool. I mean, it's fine. We know what it's like. We were just, it took me 10 minutes initially today just to get your name right. So like,
but he is such a riot, man. I love him. He's one of the most because I think there's a few art presenters that I truly, truly enjoy, and Yama was one of them. And Ian McCaig, the Star Wars artist.
Good dude.
Yeah.
He's actually, I think he's coming back at one point to teach in Scotland, because he qualified at the Glasgow School of Art in Scotland. That's where he got his degree from before he moved to the States and started working on Star Wars. So
I see.
he's always wanted to come back here and teach. So there's rumors of him coming back to teach in Glasgow. But yeah, Yama was funny, man, because I was at Lightbox and I just bumped into him, and he was like, fucking hell, man, like everywhere I go, you're like you're at every event. And I was like, yeah, try to get around. He's like, oh, it was so good to hear like an accent from that side of the world. I've just been talking to Americans for the last week. I was like, yeah. But Yama's a cool dude, man. I first bumped into him at IMAG in Paris in 2018. And yeah, he was just talking about his work in Star Wars at the time and everything he was doing, and he was talking about like how he worked for Lucasfilm, and I was like, oh, you mean ILM? And he was like, no. Lucasfilm is a completely different thing.
Yes, it
ILM,
is.
they just work in Star Wars, but it's kind of that's it. But yeah, but it was funny because I said that at the time, and he was like holding his face, like, oh my god, man, that's a good...
yeah, it's a very different entity. Yeah, but it's so easily bundled up together, though. So it
of course, sense. But then of course, in the last year, he's went freelance, and he's just been working on stuff by contract. But then I think the last time I saw him doing a talk, it was all about how he redesigned Aladdin basically, and redesigned the genie and all the stuff for that film. So yeah,
his recent VR sculpt with the eagle catching the thing, that's good, and he rendered it in Blender as well.
Oh mate, like the best examples I've seen of stuff in VR is Goro Fujita.
Makes sense.
Goro's stuff in Quill is like, it's ridiculous. Like every day you see him doing like these 30-minute illustrations in Quill, and oh man, I don't know how he manages to get the complexity of a lot of the scenes he does in like half an hour. It's crazy. Like he just spends his lunch break making these little sculpts, and they're just ridiculous. So
I mean, definitely, like if you are comfortable with traditional medium, which is kind of like why I still choose to sketch on pen and paper. Right. Like when you jump back into digital, it just becomes so much quicker.
Yeah, I definitely found that even I was speaking to, because we had Glauco Longen no longer on the podcast, and Glauco was saying his illustrations and studies in 2D have actually informed a lot of his 3D building. And stuff, the way he sculpts. Because he talked about using gouache even recently, and he was talking about how gouache in itself is like a medium where you almost sculpt the forms as opposed to paint them.
Yes.
Yeah. So, yeah, definitely, man. I even remember watching an interview on Blender Guru, and he was talking to a guy from Riot Games who done character development, but it was 2D and 3D. He done both of them, but he was just saying that like when you went to one medium, it informed the other one. So when people were like, oh, I don't want to sketch because that'll take away from my sculpting, it actually adds to it. It actually contributes towards your sculpting. So yeah, definitely don't shy away from trying to vary mediums, because they do feed into each other when you eventually make stuff. Even like you said, if you can sketch really well, if you have a good sketch hand, if you then walk into a Wacom Cintiq or just even an Intuos, like you'll find you sketch quicker or a bit more looser or a bit more flow in your work because you've done that time on the sketchpad.
Yeah, there's something in your brain that just becomes activated, because I guess it's a one tool device, right? Like a pencil or a pen. Yeah. So it just gives you so little things to worry about. You just do it, and it becomes just a direct translation of design. I love what Clogo. Man, I'm killing his name as well.
So good.
Whatever, yeah. But he said like how digital art is just, there's too much options, and in fact you want to reduce it. That was
Glauco. You're talking about Glauco.
Yeah, Glauco. There we
go. Yeah. No. He was saying the same. It's like there's so much, but then when you look at like how VR sculpting is coming along, I reckon when those tools start to accelerate, it's going to eventually, because they're so much closer to traditional sculpting than using a pen on a tablet, like, because that's almost like the opposite. That's like drawn. But then if you could physically mold with those tools in like an Oculus setting, then you could start to see those being mixed more into production. Because I know Yama was talking about they were using it early on. Even Chris, a couple of guys from some of the studios in London and Pinewood were saying that they were building sets in 3D and then putting the headset on the director, and he was able to walk around the sets in 3D and get a feeling for how the space would lay before they built it. So I think VR is going to be more and more integrated as time goes on. I think it's definitely going to be something that's going to become like a major production tool in games and movies.
Yeah, and I think like muscle memory comes more into play as well, like just being able to move your entire arm and actually have it
Yeah.
come out on screen. I think they did the same thing for the Lion King film. I think all of the cinematography was done in VR, so they literally built the whole savannah in 3D.
Most likely, I would imagine. Yeah, it definitely is. I think for just the more you can speed that production up in most of these sets, I think it's more and more asked for because time is money in any
Mm-hmm.
aspect of the production. So if you can make that a lot quicker or visualized a lot quicker, then yeah, people would definitely get behind that as soon as they can. Because to a production company, 300, 400 pounds for a headset is like chump change. And if you buy a
Yeah,
couple of them for that department, like, because even then, if you think now with the Quest, you can run the whole thing in the
yeah,
headset.
yeah.
You don't even need a computer. So if you're versing up like a 3 or 4 thousand built machine, and then versus a couple £100 for a headset, what I mean, the headset's going to win every time.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, definitely the future is in an interesting kind of time period where these new technologies are becoming more like even guys I know who now do concepting, but they do it like exclusively in Procreate. Like they don't even use Photoshop anymore.
Yep.
So like, now that these tools are getting more advanced, then yeah, like eventually it's going to get to a point where you can just pick and choose, what you want to use. It's the same for 3D artists, right? You've got Modo, you've got Maya, you've got Max, you've got Blender. Now, especially Blender recently has become a major contender. So yeah, there's
Absolutely.
just
Yeah, I absolutely love Blender. I mean, I've been using it more and more in my work.
yeah. Well, people were saying it was at 2.7 or 2.8. Like as soon as that hit, like the whole thing changed. There was so many
Ah,
like massive
7.
features.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it
yeah, yeah.
started with 7, where they kind of cleaned up their act a little bit because
Right,
the UI UX was kind of like their biggest weakness.
right.
And with 2.8 and now 2.82, it's like
Mm-hmm.
it's stable enough. It's quite a beast.
Right. Yeah. More similar to stuff like Maya or Max, like the traditional stuff.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. Because I've used Maya
Yeah,
forever.
same. I started with
Yeah.
8.5.
Wow, that's going back up hell. Yeah, I don't even know. I'm on like it's just a year now, right? So you just get like Maya 2019,
Yeah, yeah.
2018
This was before they used kind of the year coding. Same as
years. Yeah, yeah.
I think I was on Photoshop 7 during my student time.
Maya for me was 2017 model or 2016. Sorry, was the first one. I think I used, but then even that was like brand new when we were using it. So yeah, like I've definitely been using it for a while, but then I feel very comfortable with just the UI. I don't know. I'd want to try and move across to stuff like Blender or Modo, but then I suppose once I solidify my skills in Maya, I can then try to transition across to other things. But I'm so comfortable right now because I'm on custom shelves and everything. So, and I know my hotkeys, so it's
Oh
quicker for
man,
me.
yeah.
Yeah, quicker for me to make stuff in that than it is to sit in Blender for half an hour wondering where all the buttons are. But I think eventually I'll probably try and start moving across. But I know like Maya and ZBrush and Substance are like my three main pipelines that I want to try and get really down before I go into a studio because ZBrush, you've got your sculpting, Maya, you've got your hard surface stuff, and then of course Substance for texture and everything. So yeah, because so once I've got those down, I'll start to venture out. But at the moment, I'm quite happy just in there, and of course Photoshop eventually when I need it, I can use that as well. So yeah,
Yeah, I think it's a strange time, right? Because I think 3D, the need to specialize for 3D art is become more and more apparent, in my opinion.
yeah,
Like I have friends who just only do substance designer and painter,
yeah,
and they have to be so good at it, right? Because they're kind of doing basically all of the materials in the game.
yes.
Um, and
I've done it. I've done materials recently in Designer, and it's a great program to make them. But yeah, like you'll probably find you'll need to specialize in the massive studios. Like if you're going to AAA development, they'll have their own texture department and their own
Mhm.
like organic department. So if you're going to specialize, yeah, definitely like Substance is a great one to do because they're always looking for texture artists because it's such a niche. Like there's Javier Perez, like he's done amazing stuff with Designer in the last couple of years, even building geometry, just out of pure Designer files with height maps. and yeah, he's been working on Last of Us and stuff like that. He's just kind of a gun for hire for Sony, but yeah, definitely. I think at the start of the junior side of it, it'll be just getting a general grip of anything, Maya related and ZBrush and Substance, and building like an overall package, and then going into studios and be like, well, I can model something, I can UV it, texture it, and then put it in an engine. So yeah, also working in engine, so stuff like Unreal or Unity, also getting a hang of that. So
yeah,
but it depends what I want to go through. There's multiple avenues for doing 3D, but yeah, we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, I've been dabbling with Unreal Engine quite a bit this past 2 years as well. So, man, have you given the sequencer a shot?
No, I mean I've tried it occasionally for doing some rendering stuff, but I think the good thing about working in real time is that you can render that stuff super fast. Whereas
yeah,
the pre-render stuff takes forever. But then like when you're working in 60 FPS, you're thinking 60 frames per second. Like that's hella fast to render a scene.
It is.
So yeah, it makes sense why people are now putting a lot of this stuff in Unreal, because it's just a click of a button and bam, you have a sequence. Even up into 4K, like you can make 4K renders in a couple of seconds. So it's crazy.
And it's actually, I mean, the amount of work that they're doing to make it more user friendly, because I think prior to this, like you needed like some sort of programming degree to even operate the thing.
Oh yeah, well remember when Unreal was like it cost you money to have the software? Now people can just download it for free.
Exactly.
So I mean,
yeah.
It's crazy how, and the fact that even like Epic had so much money from Fortnite, they were just giving away free games every week. They were just throwing games at people. Like, here, we've paid the publisher like millions of dollars, just have all these games for free.
Exactly, yeah.
So like, yeah, it's becoming an absolute powerhouse now. But yeah, like Unreal used to cost a fortune to, even if you were into developing, you wanted to just use it to build like a small game, you still had to pay something like $1,000 just to have the license.
Mm-hmm.
But now it's free, so you just download it and use it at your heart's content. There's people can make games in a weekend, especially I've seen a lot because there was so much open market for the VR space because nobody was making any games for it. So people were like making like really crappy like VR games with a lot of the Cinti Studios stuff. Did you ever hear of Cinti Studios? They make like packs of like people and assets for games, but they're really super low poly.
I see. Okay. So
yeah.
That's just for like quick game developments then, yeah?
Yeah, basically you can just throw like, you can buy like a city pack that comes with buildings and cars and people, and you can just throw them in. But yeah, Cinti Studios make some incredible stuff. They made a cyberpunk thing recently. Oh, it was incredible. But yeah, like people can make games in a weekend now, so it's just it's getting to a point now. It's like it's hard to catch up. Everything moves so fast. But yeah, we'll get there. I'm sure. I'm sure we'll be fine. We'll manage. So anyway, we're gonna wrap that up a little bit now because we're obviously I'm wanting to make sure you get back to doing whatever you were doing, and I'm not going to keep you for too long. But yeah, it's been really awesome. We've talked about a lot of things, and your career was one of them, and your whole approach to modeling and using your concept stuff. So yeah, I think we'll definitely try and get you back on at one point and talk further in depth about projects you've worked on and any advice for students. But yeah, if you guys got any questions, just leave them down in the comments and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. Or if you know anybody else you'd like to hear from or have me interview, again, just leave it in the comments and we'll try and integrate it as best we can. Just to say thanks very much, Farrell, for coming on and giving up his time. Very thankful for giving up in your day and talking to me, man. I really appreciate it. Thank you for coming on. It's been a pleasure.
Oh, it's a pleasure, man. Thank you so much for the invite. Really honored.
Yeah. Of course, man, that's awesome. And again, yeah, if you're on YouTube or anything, or you're on Spotify or anywhere you're listening to this, just make sure you give it a little share or a like or a review. Helps us out in the channel. And yeah, we'll just catch you guys in the next episode. Again, we'll be coming back once every month, so hopefully again in the next 4 weeks, 3 weeks, you'll hear from me again. But until that time, thanks to you guys for listening, and we'll catch you later. Bye, guys.